Welcome back to the Nino G Show. I'm your host, Nino Vaquero. We're standing up for liberty. We're stopping tyranny, or at least trying to exploit it. 53 subscribers. Holy smokes. Thank you for the support. I couldn't do it without you. If you ever sit back and you realize you're getting really ticked off here, that it seems like our rights and our freedoms are eroding faster than the potholes in the city of Pittsburgh, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We got a lot of things to talk about. Mainly tyranny. We always say tyranny. What is it? Here's the Merriam-Webster since 1828 dictionary. The definition of tyranny. Tyranny. Definition 1, oppressive power. Every form of tyranny over the mind of man. Woo. Some guy named Thomas Jefferson. Especially oppressive power exerted by government. The tyranny of a police state. I.e. example, maybe forced vaccinations. Let's see, maybe forced masks. Oh, that's kind of tyrannical. Or vaccine passports. Number 2, A government in which absolute power is vested in a single ruler. The Honorable Joseph Biden. B, the office, authority, or administration of a tyrant. Oh my. I'll skip 3. Number 4, an oppressive, harsh, or unjust act. A tyrannical act. Interesting. Something that's other interesting. I can't even use my commie update anymore. That was the USSR Soviet Union anthem that I was using for the Harris Biden administration, but I actually got contacted. YouTube told me that, it wasn't really YouTube that was silencing me. It was someone from the USSR, I think, but they were trying to monetize the song that I did, so I had to take it out. But all glory, honor, and praise goes to the Harris Biden administration with their new montage I've created. Hopefully I don't get hit for that. But in the spirit of tyranny, I'd like to thank the Harris Biden administration for all their tyrannical acts that they're throwing down our throats.
I mean, I would just say, hey, Joe, instead of saying no, we can't, let's say yes, we can.
Oh, welcome to the new commie update, the Harris Biden administration update.
You gotta.
Oh, geez, that was it. So we took that away. That's going to be the new one. I'm very glad you guys are here to see that and enjoy it. But let's get right into it. I got a wonderful publication here called the Epic Times. And they have an article on our first example of tyranny into the lives of the tyranny being perpetrated by the U.S. government on the American people. So this article is titled Concerns Over UN Plan to Facilitate Global Migration. Yikes. That sounds disgusting to me. But right underneath that, the Biden administration moving closer to joining the UN Global Agreement, UN officials say. Oh my goodness. So first of all, the UN, get out of town. I don't care about your global governance there. We have a sovereign state. We have a beautiful country that was established for the virtuous people of the world to come on a merit-based system to get in, to give something back to the American people in the American way of life. The Biden administration is working on laws that would bring U.S. immigration policy more in line with the UN's, including providing amnesty to the estimated 15 million illegal immigrants currently in the country. That is crazy. So beyond that, the Trump administration said back when they were dealing with this whole concern over the UN plan to facilitate the global migration, they said their efforts represented an attempt by the UN to advance global governance at the expense of the sovereign rights of the states to manage their own immigration systems in accordance with the international laws, policies, and interests. The Trump administration went on to say the UN compact was a threat to free expression, immigration enforcement, American workers, and even a proper understanding of rights. Well, the UN believes that they can just advance all this illegal immigration into America and Europe because they have a wider plan to force Americans and even Europe into that global form of government. That's what they want. It's disgusting. They don't have a right. You don't have a right to go to different countries because you want to. Now, every single state has, our countries, we have sovereign rules. We have rules to get in. That's not a human right that you can just walk on in there and demand legislative respect or whatever you need. That's the first example of tyranny. I think that is a tyrannical move. You have an administration that stated, hey, They lied. They lied right through their teeth. I remember watching the whole entire sham campaign. I followed it all the way from the 6 people that were in their little white circles to Joe in his basement to all of a sudden get elected with the most votes in modern history. Which brings to my second example of tyranny. You had the most votes in modern history. You had 75 million people vote for Trump, which I think were legal. They were there. That was perfect. Then all of a sudden, 80 million for Joe Biden, the basement dweller himself. I don't believe it. But even if I do believe it, and you do all those, over 160 million people voted there, why sweeping legislation through the House for the equity bill or whatever you want to call for voting rights bill? Why do we need to ram down a federal grab of state elections? Why do we need to do that if the most people ever voted in history? I don't get it and I don't understand it. Actually, I do, because it is tyranny. I want to read a quote by this guy named Thomas Jefferson. I, however, place economy among the first and most important Republican virtues. As public debt, as the greatest of dangers to be feared, to preserve our independence, we must not let our rulers load us with perpetual debt. I am for a government rigorously frugal and simple. Yikes! Thomas Jefferson, you know for a fact he is rolling over in his grave here. So again, from the Epic Times, they did a wonderful publication here breaking down the newest infrastructure plan. The $2.3 trillion infrastructure plan. A depletion of our treasury, a riddling of generational debt. Economists say the plan amounts to a massive federal power grab, potentially the largest in decades, while criticizing the Biden administration's broad definition of infrastructure. That's another buzzword that the left is using now. But infrastructure goes farther than just a bridge or a road or anything like that. They're saying everything from research and development, supply chains, federal buildings, childcare. What the heck? Sustainable housing. Now, one thing I did see, so check this out. I'm going to hold this up if you're watching here instead of listening. I'm holding up this giant publication, the great picture here from the Epic Times. If you want to look at it, they really did a great job breaking down the Biden administration's infrastructure plan, adding to the already $2 trillion that they already spent in the name of COVID, which only 6% of that bill actually went to COVID. One thing that I saw that really hit me, that gave me an old gut check, like AOC would say, is that the third least amount of money that they're spending is going to veterans hospitals. Jeez Louise, we got over a 250,000 people exiting the military every single year. It's a lot of patriots exiting. A little bit of that infrastructure bill, I think that would, whatever. I'm just a disgruntled veteran here. But of the $2.3 trillion infrastructure bill, $621 billion will go to actual infrastructure, road, bridges, airports, Amtrak, making things safer. But there's some things to point out here. How about research and development? What's that? $180 billion is going to that for investments in research and development and future technologies, including $35 billion to address the climate crisis. Okay. $15 billion in trial projects for climate research priorities, and $15 billion to create 200 centers of excellence at historically black colleges and universities. Tyranny. I remember the last time they threw a couple $100 million at Solyndra under the Obama administration. That was couple $100 million of our taxpayer money. And guess what happened to the company? Bankrupt. I wonder who padded their pockets with that. How about workforce development? That's a part of infrastructure, right? I didn't know. I don't know either. $100 billion for programs targeted at underdeserved groups and getting students on path to careers, including $5 billion in support of community violence prevention programs and $48 billion in workforce development, infrastructure, future, and worker protections. What? Getting students on path to careers. So they're going to give $5 billion for that. Here we go. We can save a lot of money. One, don't go to universities to get uneducated by a bunch of Marxist communist pigs to get your gender studies degree or your degree in painting oil pastels on cardboard boxes. Don't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for that. Do it on your own. And then how about this $5 billion in support of community violence prevention programs? Okay. Well, how about we could do this before we spend money there, Harris Biden administration? How about we just, one, stop destructing the nuclear family, make sure that families get back to the dinner table there, because change starts at the dinner table with a family that's functional and happy. I'm getting emotionally charged. I'm sorry. All this money without us asking. Joe Biden, you campaigned for the 5 hours that you did campaign out in the public. You didn't say anything about spending trillions of dollars. You said you were going to unite, and you blatantly lied about that, just like whenever you were in law school and you plagiarized half of your things. Look that up. Tyranny. Tyranny is in many different forms. I think now we can point out tyranny to a greater extent because a party of division is in power. They're dividing the nation based on race, color, sex, gender, identity. It's a lot easier to build a movement based on emotions than it is to build a movement based on intellect. So right now they're keeping everyone at each other's throats because we're all distracted from the bigger picture of them depleting our treasury in the name of social justice or whatever the heck they're going to call it. So, guarding virtue and freedom. I read this in the Constitution. I got the book on the Constitution here. But Benjamin Franklin said, only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. As nations become corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters. And that leads me to my next thing. The masters of corporate wokeism. Corporate wokeism. Why is this a thing now? Well, we saw it. They started stepping into it during the Obama administration. And then the Trump administration, nothing except national interest and hate Orange Man bad was portrayed. But there was never corporate entities walking in to try to get into politics. You know, it's coming from the left. And they're trying to inject themselves into the equation here. And that's because they're scared of the Democratic thugs and then the cancel culture and everything else. So these cronies want to try to inject themselves into politics because we've heard it a million times. Think about Bernie, the guy Bernie, crazy Bernie. He got screwed twice. You know for a fact he won the nomination both times around against Hillary Clinton and Joseph Biden. But they shunned him. They said, hey, you need to step back because the American people are never going to allow a democratic socialist to get in there. Well, they keep him in the dark, but what has Bernie been saying for the longest time?
Where a handful of billionaires control the economic and political life of this country. And as president, I am prepared to take them on.
Yikes. He is prepared to take them on. The Democratic Party's prepared to take them on. So what's happening is these spineless jellyfish, the ones that are chasing the dollar, are now injecting themselves into American life because they're afraid to not do that. They don't want to get attacked by these radicals that are now running the government here. So they're injecting themselves into into everyday life. I got an example here, another Breitbart News article here. Mitch McConnell on Wednesday walked back his call for corporate America to stay out of politics after several big businesses publicly voiced opposition to Georgia's voter integrity law. Voter integrity law. Don't even get me started on that. That bill, I dove real deep into it. That bill actually gave more voting rights. But then you had the left peddling that it was Jim Crow, this and that. McConnell said, we are witnessing a coordinated campaign by powerful and wealthy people to mislead and bully the American people. The president has claimed repeatedly that state-level debates over voting procedures are worse than Jim Crow or Jim Crow on steroids. Nobody actually believes this. Nobody really thinks this current dispute comes anywhere near the horrific racist brutality of segregation. And a host of powerful people and institutions apparently think they stand to benefit from parroting this big lie. Mitch McConnell said that. Corporate wokeism is a giant big lie. They're meddling into our regular everyday affairs because they're afraid to get attacked. You saw the CNBC compiled a list of corporate responses to the bill. You had BlackRock issuing a statement. Coca-Cola was doing anti-white training. Delta Airlines, Merck, the pharmaceutical giant, Porsche, UPS, Microsoft, Bank of America, Cisco, Home Depot, JP Morgan Chase, Citigroup. Oh, that's funny. All the guys that got bailed out from the government, of course, are going to go with the flow here. LinkedIn, Facebook, Viacom, CBS. They all wanted to stick their nets out. U.S. major companies take aim at Georgia's new voting restrictions. First off, why? Because of this corporate wokeism, because of whatever happened, you had the MLB All-Star Game left Georgia, which is in Atlanta, a predominantly black area, which was going to inject $100 million worth of tourism revenue. But they left and they went to, where'd they go? Denver, which is majority white, probably as white as Vermont almost. But whatever, the double standard, you gotta create the hype, the hoop, the holler, get people mad, understand it. Biden condemns new Georgia laws, blatant attack on voting rights. Biden's, look at him. He don't even know where he's at right there. I think that was his historic press conference, the only one he gave. Top Democrats and advocates have harshly criticized the restrictions, which include a ban on giving food and water to voters in line, signed into law Thursday night. Oh, man. Look at that beautiful language. You'd be like, well, first off, who goes to the voting booth here to get a free meal or something? Last article I want to show you. Pressure mounts on corporations to denounce Republican voting bills. Pressure is mounting on leading companies in Texas, Arizona, and other states, particularly after Major League Baseball's decision Friday to move the 2021 All-Star Game out of Atlanta. Read this. Liberal activists are stepping up calls for corporate America to denounce Republican efforts to tighten state voting laws, and businesses accustomed to cozy political relationships now find themselves in the middle of a growing partisan fight over voting rights. Buzzword, voting rights. You know what I look at this bill, and you know what it is actually? It does suppress votes, right? And read this thing right here. It says, the outcry comes after a week of Georgia Republicans enacted an overhaul of the state's election law that critics argue is an attempt to suppress Democratic votes. Yeah, it is a suppression of Democratic votes. Illegal votes? Dead people? Jeez. You need an ID to cash that check that you're getting from the government. So how is it wrong to ask people to have an ID to vote? I don't understand this. Even Barack Hussein Obama himself states the myth of voter ID and the fact that it does not impact the black vote. Let's hear what he has to say. Play audio soundbite number 1, go.
Keep in mind that most of these laws are not preventing the overwhelming majority of folks who don't vote from voting. Most people do have an ID. Most people do have a driver's license. Most people can get to the polls. The bottom line is, if less than half of our folks vote, these laws aren't preventing the other half from not voting.
Yikes! Oh, Barrio coming in for the win. Major distraction. Keep everybody upset. Tyranny is facing us from every single side of the aisle. Remember, it's not left or right. It's up or down with the nation. This is the most severe situation that I've seen in my life, but I've spoken to a lot of elderly individuals too, and they're saying it too. They have never seen anything like what's happening and what's being pushed down our throats from this federal government. Tyranny is at every single stage. It starts with the DCMZ, which is the District of Columbia Militarized Zone, which turned into the selfie insurrection, which they kept this up for a reason why they're still keeping on this charade. Oh, guess what? The Capitol was attacked the other day by someone just running a vehicle in there and killing a police officer. But that was quietly hidden real quick because it was a Nation of Islamer, right? Oh man, we can't say that. The DCMZ, the lockdown of the Capitol, the further duping of the insurrection, this and that. It's to keep us out of the Capitol. They are ramming down generational spending without the will of the American people. They came in trying to unite, and they're doing exactly the opposite. They don't want you in there. They don't want you challenging what's going on, and they're protecting themselves because they know they're doing things against the will of the American people. Now, with this infrastructure bill that they're trying to plan right now, that is the injection of socialism into the American people. When the American people say, okay, we're complacent enough, and we allow that to happen, sounds crazy. Communism comes in. But when do the patriots stand up? When do the American people say enough is enough? We need to stand up for liberty, and don't be afraid to challenge the narrative. Until the next time, thank you guys so much. 53 subscribers. It's only up from here. I can't wait to see you guys on the next one. Take care. I'm out.